Have a great day everyone, this is Chana Balgundao, and for today's video we're going to continue the report of Killjoy about teaching listening. So my task is to discuss about the several strategies that students and their teachers can use to prepare for a listening experience. So join me as we discover what are the strategies in teaching listening process. Here we go. Okay, one of the strategies that students and teachers can use to prepare for a listening experience is active existing knowledge. Students should be encouraged to ask the question, what do I already know about this topic? So when this question is asked to a student, of course the student will going to reflect, will going to discuss how deep his knowledge about a certain topic. So from this, teachers and students can determine what information they need in order to get the most from the message. And also, students can brainstorm, discuss, read, view films or photos, and write and share journals entries. Next, build prior knowledge. So teachers can provide the appropriate background information, including information about the speaker, topic of the presentation, the purpose of the presentation, and the concepts and vocabulary that are likely to be embedded in the presentation. So in here, the teachers may rely upon the oral interpretation to convey the meanings of the unfamiliar words. So this means that the teacher is leaving the discussion of these words until or after the presentation. So at this stage, the teachers need to point out the role that oral punctuation, the body language, and the tone play in the oral presentation. Next, review standards for listening. So the teacher should stress the importance of the audience role in a listening situation. So in here, of course, since it is teaching listening, when there is a speaker, of course, there is also a listener. And the speaker cannot stand alone without listener who will going to listen what or she will going to say. So in this, there is an interactive relationship between audience and speaker, and of course each of them are affecting the other. So in teaching listening, the teachers can outline the following considerations to the students. So in here, the students have to be physically prepared for listening. Of course, it is very important. Next, the students need to be attentive, and then listen to others as you would have them listen to you. Of course, during the teaching listening process, when the speaker is talking, the listener should listen well to the speaker. And also when the teacher or when the listener are going to ask question for the speaker, of course, the speaker will going to listen also to that listener and then going to answer what they are questioning. Another strategy is establishing purpose. So teachers should encourage students to ask, why am I listening? What is my purpose? So in this the students are questioning what is their purpose, why they are listening to that speaker. So in establishing purpose, students should be encouraged to articulate their purpose. So like this questions. Then before a speaker's presentation, teachers can also have the students formulate questions that they predict will be answered by the speakers. And also they can pose the questions to the speakers, and they should be encouraged to jot down questions during listening. So in that way, they will know or they are going to be interested what will the answer of the speaker after the presentation. So under the establishing purpose is what we call TQLR. So it consists of the following steps: T for tune in, Q for question, L for listen, R for review. Let's have first the tune in. So the listener must tune in to the speaker and the subject. So listener must be mentally calling up everything known about the subject and shutting out all distractions. Next, question. So the listener should mentally formulate questions before or while the speaker is having her or his presentation. So this includes what will the speaker say about the topic? What is the speaker's background? I wonder if the speaker will talk about then something like that. Then L for listen. The listener should organize the information as it is received. So anticipating what the speaker will say next and reacting mentally to everything heard. And the last one is R for review. So the listener should go over what has been said, summarize, and evaluate constantly. So it is important here is to conceptualize the main ideas, and it should be separated from the subordinate ones. Now let's proceed to the last strategy, the use a listening guide. So a guide may provide an overview of the presentation, its main ideas, questions to be answered while listening, well, a summary of the presentation or an outline. So this will be a listening guide of the listener, so they will be able to um, fully digest what the speaker might going to say, might going to discuss, and then she will going to understand what the speaker says when you're going to formulate the main ideas, the questions, and the summary of the presentation. Now let's proceed to the while listening stage. So while listening stage, students need to understand the implications in the listening process. So according to Nicholas 1948, he found that people listen and think it 4 times the normal conversation rate. So students have to be encouraged the grade cap to actively process the message in order to use that extra time. So in this stage, it is where students listen and do a task. So also, in this stage, while listening tasks are what students are asked to do during listening time. Remember, during listening time, and the listening task should be enjoyable and meaningful to the students. And also, it should be simple and easy to handle, and it should provide opportunities for the students to succeed. So, under while listening stage, in order to be effective listeners, first you have to connect, then find meaning. After that, you are going to question and make and confirm predictions, then make inferences, and lastly, reflect and evaluate. So, connect. In Connect, you are going to make connections with people, places, situations, and ideas they know. And then you're going to find meaning. You are going to determine what the speaker is saying about people, places, or ideas. And then you're going to ask a question. Pay attention to those words and ideas that are unclear. Then make and confirm predictions. You're going to try to determine what will be the said next. Next, make inferences or making inference. You are going to determine the speaker's intent by listening between the lines, or you are going to infer what the speaker does not actually say. And lastly, reflect and evaluate. You are going to reflect or you are going to respond to what has been heard, and you are going to pass. Now let's define comprehension. So comprehension is enormously improved when the speaker's schema or organizational pattern is perceived by the listeners. This is from Divine 1982. So in comprehension, the teacher should teach the students various structures, example, short story, essay, poetry, and play. So because if the teacher is going to teach students these various structures, it will help the students increase or develop their comprehension about a certain topic. Then we have the organizational patterns. So organizational patterns, example, logical, chronological, spatial, transitional devices. So effective listeners can follow spoken discourse when they recognize key signal expressions such as the following. Number one, example words. So The keywords or the term used in example words are, for example, for instance, thus, in other words, as an illustration. So these are the example or words used in an as an example word. So in an example words, it is usually found in generalization plus example, but may be found in enumeration and argumentation. Next, the time words. So these are the keywords or used in time words. First, second, third, meanwhile, next, finally, at last, today, tomorrow, and soon. So usually we can find these terms in narration, chronological patterns, directions, and whatever events or examples are presented in a time sequence. So it is fall under sequencing. Next, addition words. So these are the terms under addition words. In addition, also, furthermore, moreover, another example, another example, and also more so, something like that. So usually, an addition words falls are usually found in enumeration, description, and sometimes in generalization plus example. Next, the result words. So, result words as a result, so, accordingly, therefore, thus. So, contrast words, however, but, in contrast, on the other hand, nevertheless. So, usually we can find this or we can find this in cause and effect for showing the relationship. Next, another thing is in result words, it is usually found in cause and effect. So in contrast words, on the other hand, it is usually found in comparison and contrast, and whenever speaker makes a comparison or contrast between two things. Most students need practice in making inferences while listening. So it is a simple way to help students become aware that there is meaning between the lines, and when they are going to read, for example, a passage from a literature, of course, they are going to be aware that there is meaning between the lines. There is not exactly the literal meaning. So in that way, they can or they can describe a character's actions or appearance or surroundings. And also when they're going while reading, they can have that information, or through the information they have read, they can make inferences about the person's character or the character's personality, something like that. Then teachers can also encourage guided imagery when students are listening to presentations that have many visual images, details, or descriptive words. So students can form mental pictures to help them remember while listening. Next, note making or listening with pen in hand. Note making forces students to attend to the message. So, in strategies, or one of the strategies in note making is to give questions in advance and remind listeners to listen for possible answers. Next, you are going to provide a rough outline, a map, or a chart or graph for students to complete as they follow the lecture. So, this is also strategies in note making. Next, have students jot down new to me items or simple list of facts or insights that the listener has not heard before. So in that way, the listener or the students would be able to listen attentively to what the speaker says, so that she could write what the question or what the teacher is asking from them. Okay, those are the strategies under note taking. So give questions in advance and remind listeners to listen for possible answers. So these are I have mentioned earlier. Next, let's proceed to another one. Transcribing. So when you are transcribing, you are writing down live or recorded speech can sharpen students' listening, spelling, and punctuation skill. So in here, teacher selects an interesting of writing. Then the selection is read aloud to the class and perhaps discussed. And then the teacher dictates the passage slowly to the class and the students transcribe the form and conventions, example spelling, punctuation, and capitalization as accurately as possible. So I can still remember during my elementary grade or during grade 6. So my English teacher is reading a passage or having or giving us a spelling. So we're going to write what she is saying or what she is talking about, and then she will check whether our spelling or our punctuation are correct or not. Critical thinking. So critical thinking plays a major role in effective listening. So listening in order to analyze and evaluate requires students to evaluate the speaker's arguments and the value of ideas, appropriateness of the evidence, and the persuasive techniques employed. So in here, effective listeners apply the principles of sound thinking and reasoning to the messages they hear at home, in school, in the workplace, or in the media. So planning and structuring classroom activities to model and encourage students to listen critically is important. So students should learn to, we have here, analyze the message. So, critical listeners are concerned with first understanding accurately and completely what they hear. So, in here, students should identify the speaker's topic, purpose, attended, audience, and the context. So, the most frequent critical listening context is persuasion. So, in analyzing the message, the most critical listening is persuasion. So they should keep an open-minded and objective attitude as they strive to identify the main ideas or claim in supporting arguments. And they are going to ask relevant questions and restate perceptions to make sure they have understood correctly. So in here, taking notes will enhance their listening. Next, they are going to analyze the message, then analyze the speaker. So the focus here is the message or the content. So in here, of course, the speaker. So critical listeners must understand the reliability of the speaker. So sometimes or mostly they are going to question, is the speaker credible, trustworthy, an expert, or dynamic? Next, or the main focus here is the speaker. Next, analyze the speaker's evidence. So the speaker's evidence. So critical listeners must understand the nature and appropriateness of the evidence and reasoning. So what evidence is used? Expert testimony, facts, statistics, examples, reasons, opinions. Inappropriate evidence might include untrustworthy testimony, inadequate, incorrect, inappropriate, or irrelevant facts, statistics, or examples or quotations out of context or incomplete. So, of course, when you are a listener, of course, you will know whether the speaker knows what she is talking or what she is presenting or not, whether she is ready or not. Next, analyze the speaker's reasoning. So, when you are analyzing the speaker's reasoning, as a critical listeners, you must understand the logic and reasoning of the speaker. Is the evidence developed in logical arguments such as deductive, inductive, causal, or analogous? So that's it. Next, analyze the speaker's emotional appeal. So emotion, from the word emotion. Critical listeners must understand that persuaders often rely on emotional appeal as well as evidence and reasoning. So, critical listeners, therefore, you are going to recognize effective persuasive appeals and propaganda devices. So, that's all. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.